Las Vegas magician makes a movie today on Talk for Two. Welcome in today on a very special edition of Talk for Two. My name is Matt Bailey, and before we get started, I want to give the obligatory thank you to our season sponsors, Axtel Expressions and the Tangent Bound Network. More about them at the end of the show. I don't know a performer who doesn't know this gentleman. Our guest today holds the distinction of being both the youngest magician and first American to win the FISM World Championship of Magic. Lance Burton spent 15 years at the Monte Carlo and performed more than 15,000 shows in his over 30-year career. Burton sat down with me to discuss everything from his new movie, Billy Topit, Master Magician, to why all of his road cases are red. Here now with some indispensable show business insights, our interview with the incredible Lance Burton. Lance Burton, master magician, but more recently, director, writer. I think you did everything under the sun for the new movie, Billy Topit. How are you? Welcome to Talk for Two.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Good to be here with you.
Well, it's an honor to have you, sir. This is a thrill. As you know, our listeners are entertainers of all sorts. I love your story. So before we talk about the movie, let's talk about your journey in show business that I think is so widely understood. But I love every time you tell the story of little 5-year-old Lance at Harry Collins' magic show.
Oh, yeah. Like all of us, I saw a show when I was a kid. I was 5 years old, and it was at the employees' Christmas party for the Frito-Lay plant in Louisville, Kentucky. My mother worked at the plant making potato chips, and they had a guy that worked there for Frito-Lay. He was a sales manager. His name was Harry Collins, and he did a magic show. He was a terrific magician. And later on, the national Frito-Lay organization took notice of Harry, and they created a job for him, and he was their goodwill ambassador.
Oh, cool.
And Frito-Lay sent him all over the country, performing at the Texas State Fair and plant openings, and everywhere he went, he was representing Frito-Lay. But anyway, at this time, I think he was a sales manager.
That's really
for Frito-Lay at the Louisville plant. And he did a magic show, and he was terrific. And he asked for a volunteer from the audience, and I was the kid that got picked to go up on stage. And he did the miser's dream, started pulling the silver dollars out from behind my ear, and I just thought that was the most wonderful thing in the world. And I was hooked on magic, but I didn't understand at that moment what it was. I thought the guy had real magic powers.
Wow.
And it was later on, maybe a couple of weeks or a couple of months later, I finally got the idea in my head that he didn't have magic powers, that this was a skill that he had learned and practiced. And then I thought, well, I figured that was great news, because if he was like Harry Potter, if the guy just had magic powers, if you didn't have those powers, then that was it. You couldn't do it.
That's awesome.
But if it was a skill, then that's something that you could study and learn, and that's what set me on my lifelong path of studying magic.
That's really cool. I love it. Now, when did you start performing?
I actually started attempting to perform right away. I remember as a kid I had a deck of cards and I was trying to do a card trick, but I had no idea how to do it.
I love that word, attempting.
Kind of frustrating. And then the next door neighbor, the lady that lived next door to us, that we called Aunt Jane. She wasn't really an aunt, but she would look after us and babysit sometimes. She noticed that I had this interest in magic,
mm-hmm.
and one day she came over, and her children were all grown and moved out, but she had a little small children's book that belonged to one of her kids when they were little, and it was called Magic Made Easy.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a little children's book that taught you how to do like 10 or 12 simple tricks. And so she must have noticed that I had an interest in magic. So she found this book at home, and she brought it over and gave it to me. And that's when my eyes were open, that you could learn magic, and there was such a thing as a magic book. So I started studying that book, and then I went to the library at school, and they had some books on magic, and then I got a magic set, of course, for Christmas, and just pretty much the way all of us got into the business.
That's very cool. Now, getting into the business, and then there's starting to make a career out of it. And my performing partner, he comes on my show and does my sound and stuff. I opened it up to some friends for questions, and he wanted to know, when you started to take it seriously and wanted to make a career out of it, what challenges did you face when you first started your career?
When you're a kid, and I was crazy about magic, so I would perform. I started performing at birthday parties, when I was about 12 years old, and I think the first party I did, I got $2 for the show. So, get $5 or $10 for a birthday party. That was big time then. You could go out and mow somebody's yard on Saturday, and you might get $2 or $2.50, but you could go out and do a birthday party and get $5. That was a lot better.
Yeah, that's great.
So that's your entry level job, of course, birthday parties, and then I would perform anywhere. I just loved doing magic, and I would just go and do a show anywhere. Even if they didn't have any money, that was fine. I would just go do it for free. I just wanted the experience. I wanted the flight time in front of an audience, so I could work on my act.
Yeah. Now, when did you carve out that niche of wanting to do? Maybe niche is the wrong word, but wanting to do the big production numbers like you did at the Monte Carlo, the big production shows. Where did the love of that style of performing come in?
Well, of course, that came later. When you start out, it's just a one-man act. And, then I got when I was about 14, I got some doves. And Harry Collins did doves, and that was the first magician I saw. So that sort of image got in my mind right from the beginning. And then as I studied more about magic and then started attending magic conventions and watching other magicians on TV, my first act was the dove act, was the manipulation act, and that's because when I was a kid or I was a teenager, I was just drawn to that kind of magic, those type of acts, card manipulations, Fantasio candles, dove productions, and I remember seeing in one of the books a photograph of Channing Pollock.
Oh, cool.
And as soon as I saw that photo and I read the descriptions of his act, Channing sort of became my ideal. That's what a magician's supposed to be.
Yeah.
He looked like a magician. His act, they wrote about his act. Now, and I found out later that it was Channing. I did see Channing when I was a kid. I must have been about 10 years old or 9 or 8. And Channing did an episode of The Daniel Boone Show.
Oh, nice.
And he played a character called Fletcher the Flamboyant. And he was a traveling, kind of a carnival magician, kind of a con man. Mm-hmm. And he did some sequences in the show where he did some dove productions. He did part of his act actually on the show.
Wow.
And it was just that type of magic. I was drawn to that type of magic first. That's why my first act was the dove act. But and then I moved out west when I was 21 years old, and then came to Las Vegas, and I was working in the Folies Bergère in the review show. But I was still just doing the dove act. But somehow during the years, it kind of got into my mind that I wanted to do one day a full evening show on the scale of the great magicians of the past, like a Blackstone or a Thurston or Dante. So that was always in my mind, and it was a long time. It was many years of putting that together, one routine at a time.
Yeah.
And
what was the first one?
The best advice I ever got, I got from a man named George Goebel, who's a terrific magician from, I think, Baltimore, Maryland. And I met him at the first magic convention I ever attended. It was the IBM convention in Evansville, Indiana, in 1976. And I was 16 years old. And he did a full evening show at the convention. And I got a chance to meet him and talk to him. He gave me some advice that was great. He's for doing an illusion show. I was interested in doing a full show even back then when I was a teenager. He said, number one, paint your cases red. That way you won't lose them. So no matter where you go, if you're on a plane or you're on a boat, when you get off, you say, go down there to the hold and bring up those 35 red crates. And you won't lose. So I always had my road cases red.
Yeah.
And the second piece of advice he gave me was, don't try to put a whole show together all at once. Pick one illusion that you can do in your show and work on that, put it in your show, and perform it, break it in.
Mm-hmm.
And do that for several months. And then work on a second illusion and rehearse that and put that in the show and do it over a period of time. And I think anyone out there who's looking to put together, that wants to do a full evening show, that's the greatest advice anybody could give you. Because I see a lot of the guys over the years who've attempted to put together a full evening show, and that's the classic mistake. Is I'm going to go out and find an investor, and I'm going to build 25 illusions, and we're going to rehearse them. We're going to open the whole show, and that's really the wrong way to go about it. I think George Goebel's advice was correct, and that's the way I always tried to do it, one illusion at a time.
One illusion at a time. Do you remember what the first one was?
Let's see. Over the years, back when we were in college, Matt King and I were working summers down at a little theme park.
Oh, cool.
Called Tombstone Junction. Even back then, I did my act and he did his act, and then we did a thing together. It was a thing with costumes and a transposition between the two of us. So that was probably our first experiment in illusions. And then when I moved out west, the first thing I put in my act, after I come out to Las Vegas, kind of established myself as a review show act with the Doves. The first thing I put in was the sword fight.
Oh, wow.
The card sword, and then the sword fight with the transposition.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Now, I want to ask, when you are creating something, when you are putting an effect together, and I want to use an example I saw on YouTube. You're multiplying bottles. Okay, let's talk about that. When you're creating something, how do you decide what avenue you're going to take with it? I mean, I've seen that. I mean, you get laughs from it, but I've also seen it played for extreme comedy. But I think more with you, it's classy. You have Sinatra going with it. How do you decide what approach you're going to take to the presentation of an effect?
Well, that's a great question, and I don't have a good answer for you, because every routine that you've ever seen me do has all come about through a different procedure. Mm-hmm. Now, for the bottle trick, multiplying bottles, that's basically the Ken Brook routine. Mm-hmm. And my friend from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, David Seebach, gave me the permission to do the thing with the handkerchiefs tied on the bottles. I had seen him do that years ago. But the way the routine came about was this, and here's an example of a routine coming about through a very odd way. I was reading a biography on Frank Sinatra, and I was just reading it, for pleasure, just because I was interested. And it was he lived a very exciting life and a very interesting life, and he was, a supremely talented entertainer.
Yes.
And there was a passage in the book where here's Sinatra, the guy people consider the greatest entertainer of the century, voted best singer for decades, Academy Award-winning actor, millions and millions of record sales, the girls swooning over him. So you have Sinatra, all these great things he's accomplished in his life.
Pinnacle entertainer.
Yet, there was a passage in the book that Sinatra referred to himself as a saloon singer. And that just really struck me. And I thought, wow, that is really fascinating.
Of all the
Academy
things.
Award winner, million selling recording artist, but he doesn't call himself an Academy Award winning artist. He calls himself a saloon singer. Now that's cool.
That is.
And so that's how the routine started. I started thinking, if Sinatra's the saloon singer, I guess that makes me a saloon sorcerer. And that was the line, and that started the ball rolling. Because working in Las Vegas, no matter how nice the theater is, and I was working in a beautiful state-of-the-art theater, you're still working in a saloon. There's people there, and they got a drink in their hands, and they've been gambling.
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
And so that's what started the ball rolling. So I thought, saloon sorcerer. What trick could I do? Because Sinatra had his ultimate saloon song that he sang. What would be a saloon magic trick? And then, of course, multiplying bottles just jumped into my mind.
Yeah.
And I got a set of bottles. Actually, my friend Peter Ravine had a set of bottles, and he gave them to me. He said, I've got these brand new bottles. I've never used them. I was talking to him. He gave me the set of bottles. And then I contacted David Seaback, and he was really generous in giving me permission to use his the Hank thing with the bottles. And I rehearsed the thing, and I put it in the show, and it went over fine. It went over fine. Nothing wrong with the trick. And I thought, okay, now I want to put some music to it. And then I called a friend of mine, Rick Michael, who's a really talented singer and Sinatra impersonator here in Las Vegas. And I got Rick on the phone, and I remember it was at Christmas time, because I was back in Kentucky visiting my family for Christmas. And I'm talking to Rick on the phone, and I explained to him the trick and what I'm looking for. And I said, Sinatra had his ultimate saloon song. Now, I can't use that because of the legalities. At that time, the Monte Carlo Hotel, the venue, they did not have an agreement with ASCAP and BMI.
Interesting.
So we couldn't use any pre-existing songs because of that. So all my music had to be in the public domain, or it had to be a work for hire, and I had to have my own recording of it so that we wouldn't get into trouble legally. So I explained all this to Rick, and I said, I want a song that kind of feels like a Sinatra saloon song. I want you to sing it. And he starts making the song up on the spot, on the phone. And he starts singing on the phone.
Wow.
Making up lyrics.
That's incredible.
And I'm on the phone going, yeah, Rick, yeah, that's it, that's what I want. so when I got very excited because I'm not a musician. I can't play an instrument. I can't sing. So when someone with that kind of talent can just off the top of their head come up with something, I mean, that's really impressive to me. To me, that's real magic. And so anyway, I got back to Vegas, and I got together with Rick and his buddy who played the piano, and we went over to the guy's house that played the piano, and we recorded that song and put it in. And when we put the music into the routine, it took a routine, which was a good routine, was a solid routine, and made it into a theatrical experience.
Yeah.
It just elevated it up so much. It was really, really shocking to me how big a difference the music made.
Yeah.
And
I love it.
And so that's the story with the multiplying bottles. But it started with a passage in a book.
Yeah, I think that's just great. I love, because everybody has the story of how they've created certain effects, and it's just wonderful to hear. And the last question I have about skill and technique before we get into talking about Billy Topit and what you're doing in your retirement is, in this other interview I heard of yours, you talk about stage presence, about you were comparing, I don't know if it was FISM or if it was another competition you were in. You talked about how you and this other guy, you were competing, and this gentleman, nothing against him, you said in the interview, just he didn't smile, is what you said. And you talk about stage presence and how that kind of kicks in after you learn the skills and they become rote. When did you realize you had stage presence in spades? When did that hit you?
I don't know. When we start out, when you start out when you're a kid and you're learning your magic, you stand in front of the mirror and you practice, and you're really trying to get the moves right and then make the magic right. Because you don't want to flash, and you want your steals to all be smooth, and of course that's all very important. Mm-hmm. But then once you start performing your act in front of people you don't know, after you get past the first 50 shows or so, mm-hmm. You start to relax a little bit on stage, and you start to feel more comfortable, and that's when you really start trying to communicate with the audience. So you're listening to the audience, you're listening to their reaction. So that's really, I think, all it is just being comfortable, having enough shows under your belt where you feel comfortable on stage, and instead of doing a monologue, you're having a conversation with the audience. So, for instance, you produce a dove. You practice the move, so you don't have to think about that anymore. So you produce a dove, and the dove appears. The audience reacts to that. They gasp, they applaud, or they laugh. Whatever their reaction is, and you hear that. Now you look at the audience, and now you react to them. Mm-hmm. If they start applauding, you look at them, and you just do a natural reaction. You like smile, like, oh, hey, you like that, great.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's just listening to the audience and reacting to what they do, and they're reacting to what you're doing. So it's a back and forth. It's a conversation. But that sounds real simple, but you can't do that if your whole focus is on your technique,
right?
Because you're still nervous about doing it in front of people. But you have to get through those first 50 or 100 shows or 200 shows, whatever it is. But that's all it is. It's just flight time in front of an audience, so that all feels perfectly natural for you.
That's awesome. Now, you talk about having enough shows under your belt. You said you had enough shows. You retired from the Monte Carlo, and I gotta ask, why did you decide to retire? I got that question a couple of times.
Well, it turns out, I guess everybody's got a certain number of shows in them.
Yeah.
Turns out mine was 15,000.
I love it.
So, it's I had a wonderful time performing in front of the public, and I was a professional magician. I did that for 31 years. My first professional job was with Matt King at Tombstone Junction in 1979, and I added up all the shows, so I did 15,000 shows in my life for paying audiences.
That's awesome.
And I enjoyed every one of them.
And now you're hoping to get. I want to stop you there because we're running a little on time here. I want to get to Billy Topit. You were hoping those paying audiences will come see you in theaters as Billy Topit. What made you? I'm a theater major in college. What made you say this is the retirement gig? I'm going to turn to filmmaking.
Well, I tell you, when I was a kid, first of all, I was a theater major in college at the University of Louisville.
Oh, cool.
So I've always enjoyed theater and acting, and that, you know, Robert Houdin said a magician is an actor playing the part of a magician.
Yes.
So I guess Billy Topit is an actor playing the part of a magician, playing the part of an actor, playing the part of a magician.
Yes. It just looks hysterical. I love it.
When I was a kid, I saw the Bill Bixby series, The Magician.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the greatest television series in the history of TV. That was my favorite show. And over the years, I've seen many, many different magician characters in movies and in television shows. And some of them were great. But I felt like I could bring something to the table that hadn't been brought to the table before.
Nice.
And so that's something I've been interested in for a long, long, long time.
Yeah, I'm excited because we're talking. I've known about this project, and it's been in the works since before Burt Wonderstone, and now you see it.
Listen, this project back in 1985, I did a guest starring role on Knight Rider.
Yes.
I I played Austin Templeton, who was the evil magician assassin, and I had a great time on that show.
Mm-hmm.
And also, who worked on that show was Mark Wilson.
Yes.
Now, Mark Wilson had been the magic advisor on the Bill Bixby series, The Magician.
Mm-hmm.
And that week or two, working on Knight Rider, that's when I got to know Mark Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we had met each other before that and talked, but that was really when we got to know each other and hang out. And it was a blast acting and doing the fight sequences and doing magic, and I just really enjoyed it. And one day, after we'd been filming, I was in the car. I was in Mark's car. He was driving me to my hotel, and we were hanging out. And Mark says to me, "Lance, how do you like doing this?" And I said, "What, Mark? The Knight Rider?" He says, "Yes." I said, "Oh, I'm having the time of my life. This is fantastic. I'm enjoying the whole experience." And he says to me, "Well, you're doing a good job, and you're really good at this, and you should start thinking about doing this in the future. You should try to put something together like the Bill Bixby series." And he planted a seed in my mind. And a number of times over the years, I've tried to get something going as far as the TV series goes, and was never successful. But back in 2009, I called Michael Goudeau one day,
Yes.
who was working in my show. I said, "Michael, come over to my house after work. You and I are going to write a feature film." He said, "Okay," and he came over here, and we sat down, and we hammered out the plot and the characters that first night, and we wrote the script.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it started. But the seed was planted back literally 30 years ago by Mark Wilson.
That's incredible. Everything has a story, as we found out with your multiplying bottles and now with Billy Topit. That's just, I love these stories because you know everything has an origin. And what are you hoping to do with it? Where are you hoping that it goes?
I don't know, and I'm sure it will go wherever it deserves to go.
That's great. Oh, come on.
my job is to finish the movie, and we're so close now. We're so close to the finish line. It's becoming very exciting. I assure everyone you'll all get a chance to see it.
That's awesome.
Whether it's in a movie theater, or it's on television, or it's on a digital download, or a DVD, whatever format you're comfortable with. Eventually you're going to have an opportunity to see it.
I love that. Yeah, I love.
And I really think the magicians anyway will get a kick out of it, because there's so many people in the movie.
Yeah.
All of my friends are in the movie.
Yeah.
So little roles, little walk-ons. They're all a good deal of them are very well-known magicians. And it's kind of funny because you're watching the movie and you're going, oh, there's guys and they're playing poker. Wait, is that Jeff McBride?
Yeah, and Johnny Thompson is in there. I don't know if it's him who says this because the clip goes by so fast, but it's you, Johnny Thompson, and a few others stand around, and somebody goes, you got to see the trailer to understand this, but somebody goes, he's not James Bond, and I die.
Yeah, well, it's a comedy. So first of all, Michael Goudeau and I wrote the screenplay, and if you don't know Michael's history, he is a very, very funny man.
Mm-hmm.
If you've seen his act, you know this. But he's also for the past decade. Well, the show ended a few years ago, but for a decade, he was the head writer and an executive producer on Penn and Teller's Showtime series.
Oh, nice. So
Michael is an Emmy award-winning writer. He's a great guy to write with because he's just one of the truly funny people in the world. So anyway, it's a comedy. It's a family movie. You can bring your kids. You can bring your mom to the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else. It's the same. It's the same audience in my mind that came to the live show.
That's great. Yeah, and it's great that you can go as a family and see it. You know, especially with your brand and the kind of wonderment that you create. It's wonderful that that's going to live on in a brand new feature film. So, were there differences between being Billy Topit and being Lance Burton? What you find?
Oh yeah, Billy Topit and Lance Burton, very different characters and personas. And when we're filming, I drop into, especially as we got to the end of the filming process.
Mm-hmm.
We shot the entire movie, and we were doing the last couple of scenes, and cameras are rolling, and I just automatically dropped into Billy Topit.
Oh, that's great.
We certainly share some traits, especially our magic,
Mm-hmm.
are similar. But Billy's a little more wide-eyed, a little more innocent than Lance, and just a little more amazed at everything around him.
That's awesome. I want to shift gears again. Last couple of questions for you. I know we promised we'd rein this in at about 35, 40 minutes or so. 2 questions. I'll start with the first. And I want to ask this of you because I find that whenever I talk to my guests, no matter the legacy that they have, no matter where they are, and you've mentioned this a couple of times in other interviews I've read, that you're always still learning about your art. What are you still learning about magic in retirement?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the great thing about magic is you can do it for 40, 50, 60 years
Mm-hmm.
and still be learning.
Mm-hmm.
I don't perform in public anymore.
Right.
Although every now and then I'll show up for a fundraiser, a charity thing for a cause that I support.
Yeah.
And I was so thrilled. It was about, I don't remember, 6 months ago, 9 months ago, and it's nothing elaborate. I just show up and I do the silk egg and the Miser's dream. I have a mouth coil.
Oh, cool.
In my pocket, and, just I'll get up and do 10 minutes, but it's nothing.
Yeah.
Write home about, but it's not. It's just that it's a fundraiser. This was for an animal adoption,
Mm-hmm.
animal rescue adoption. So they just want to say Lance Burton's here. Here he is. People just want to basically they want me to walk out and wave so they know I'm still alive. But I'm doing the show, and I come up with a new tricks that I've done, in my live show for years, and I come up with a new joke.
Yeah, I love when that happens.
And I improvise it
Mm-hmm.
on the spot. It's nothing I thought about ahead of time. but I improvised a new line, a new joke, and it got a scream. It got a big laugh.
Yeah.
And I was so proud, after the show.
Yeah, that's great.
I've been retired for 5 years, and I came up with a new line, a new joke. That just made my day.
Yeah, that's wonderful to hear that still happens even on the rare occasions you do get up. And I got to ask, this is the last question I always like to ask my guests. Again, no matter who they are or where they come from, what do you want to see from magicians and performers coming up today that are inspired by Lance Burton and maybe want to do a dove act themselves or learn to do a big illusion show? Or what do you want to see from my generation? I'm a college student, my generation of performers.
Well, I'm very encouraged when I see young people doing magic, and I hang out. I have we have the Lance Burton team program that we had at the Desert Seminar for many, many years. And now we've moved it over to the International Brotherhood of Magicians convention. So I still get to see the young people, the young magicians, and we made that documentary a few years ago called Make Believe.
Yes.
Some of the kids that were in Make Believe, they're all grown now, and some of them are out there performing and professionally.
Yeah.
Doing amazing things.
Yes.
So I kind of got my pulse on what's going on, my finger on the pulse of some of the stuff. But here's the thing: every generation has to figure out a way to bring magic to the culture that they live in.
Mm-hmm.
I had to do that. And before me, Channing Pollock had to figure it out. And before him, Cardini had to figure it out. And before him, Thurston had to figure. So
I'm going to stop you.
It's the challenge every generation faces.
I'm going to stop you. You said that.
How do I take this art form and make it relevant to my time?
I got to follow that up. What did you figure out? How did you put your finger on the pulse of it?
Well, here's the thing. When I was starting out, when I was becoming a teenager, Doug Henning was the guy.
Yes.
Doug Henning had opened the magic show on Broadway, and he did his television specials on NBC, and he sort of resurrected magic. And Doug was, first of all, a terrific magician and a wonderful personality on stage and a really sweet man off stage, really, really nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
I got to meet him later on and hang out with him. Really, really wonderful person. But Doug had that whole 1960s vibe going on. He had the long hair, and he had these rainbow shirts and the bell bottoms and the tennis shoes, and he was so different from everyone else that had come before him. So he did great magic. He had his own unique personality, his own unique look, his own unique way of performing, and his own unique way of approaching things, and it was great. Mm-hmm. But I looked around, and I saw all the magicians starting to chase Doug, starting to go down that route. And I was, even as a teenager, I was aware enough to know, there's only one Doug Henning.
Yeah.
And all these guys that are growing their hair long and trying to go down that route, the chances of them making it are going to be real slim because we already have Doug Henning. Mm-hmm. So the most they can hope for is, okay, well, here's the poor man's Doug Henning.
Yeah.
The second tier.
Uh-huh.
Here's the JV version of Doug Henning. So, I didn't want to do that. So I thought. So my decision was, well, if everybody's going in that direction, then I'll just turn around and go in the exact opposite direction, mm-hmm. and I'll go kind of more formal, classical, to wear the tails and everything.
Yeah.
And so that's the direction I started in. Now, as my career progressed along, I altered things a little bit. When you're doing a 12-minute act, that's your act. Okay, that's your costume. Bang, you go out and do it. But when you're doing a full evening show, that's a different story.
Mm-hmm.
With a full evening show, the most important thing is you have to go out and you have to be a human being talking to other human beings and having a conversation with other human beings, back and forth. So in my show in Las Vegas, out of a 90-minute show, I wore the tails only for the first segment,
mm-hmm.
which was 3.5 minutes.
Yes, the dove.
And then at the end of the show, I went back to wearing, and I had for the masked ball, I had kind of a military tail look.
Yeah.
The opening of the way I looked at it, the opening of the show, that was a period piece,
mm-hmm.
and the masked ball was a period piece. So those are the only 2 times I wore the tails. The rest of the show, I was dressed either in kind of a contemporary tuxedo look, or I was in a black pants and black T-shirt, or I was in a black pants and kind of a black mock turtleneck, and then because that was very easy to put, I could put something over it.
Yeah.
I could put on the kind of the buckskin jacket when I was doing the Native American number.
Mm-hmm.
So the concept kind of evolved into becoming, the black sort of neutral look, which I could then put something on top of it that would fit each of the numbers.
That's a wonderful way to think of it.
So it's funny how your thinking sort of evolves over the years.
Yeah, it really is. Well, I want to stop it there. I don't want to take up too much of your time. We've been on tape for almost 42 minutes now. Thank you so much, Mr. Lance Burton. I wish Billy Topit the biggest success it deserves. It really, it's been in development for so long. I really wanted to take off for you. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about your career.
Thanks a lot, Matt. Good talking to you.
My thanks again to Lance. I can't wait to see what happens with Billy Topit. You deserve all the success I know is going to come its way. Now, Lance did promise me that news about the world premiere will be coming very, very soon. Stay tuned to BillyTopit.com for all the latest. That's BillyTopit.com. Thank you again to our season sponsors, the Tangent Bound Network, our brand new servers, and they are the reason that all 77, all over 80, what are we at, 81 now? 81 episodes of Talk for Two are online. Now, there is an iTunes bug, and there's only about 20 episodes showing, but that's an iTunes problem, and we're hoping it'll work itself out. And to our season entertainment sponsor, Axtel Expressions. Steve Axtel creates some of the coolest characters available. Head over to axtel.com and check it out. You can find all you need to know about Talk for Two by going to our website, talk4, Reach out by emailing talkfor2cast@gmail.com. That's talkfortwo@gmail.com. Find our group or like us on Facebook by searching for Talk for Two and spell that out, talkfortwo. Tweet us and about us using @ and hashtag Talk for Two. Again, spell it all out. Tomorrow, Vent Haven Executive Director Mark Wade joins us to talk about next week's convention. Until then, signing off for Talk for Two, I'm Matt Bailey, reminding everyone out there today, from the ventriloquists to the magicians, everyone out there listening, keep talking for two.